Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Shamans Cave. I'm Sandra Ingerman, and it's a blessing to spend this time with you.
And it's a blessing to spend this time with you, Sandra, and everybody else at home who are really letting us know how moved and how impactful our shows are being. And also, they love how we get along together.
Yeah, I know we haven't gotten good at putting up all the testimonials that we're getting, and I printed them out, and they're in the archive somewhere, which I can't retrieve. But every week we're just getting all these testimonials coming through the Shaman's Cave email of how touched people have been and how much it's helping. You know, it's an interesting time that we're living in. We're watching so much happen right before our eyes, and not all of it is good. And so people are looking for tools to be able to find ways to do our own work and to find comfort. And also that feeling of being in community, that you're not so isolated and that you have to be doing all of this on your own, but we're holding each other in love. And so we thank everybody who's been sending us the testimonials, and we're excited to start with our shows today. We're actually doing a two-parted show because they kind of run together. And they're both really big topics that could probably be 4 or 5 shows. And we're starting with talking about forgiveness. And then we're going to do a second show on endings.
Forgiveness and endings. And we kind of went back and forth like, well, do you have to end before you forgive, or do you forgive before you end? And the other thing in these, besides for these testimonies, and then we'll get into the forgiveness, is how many young people are watching our show, Sandra. When I was letting people into the group and stuff, and the questions that I'm seeing on YouTube, a lot of people are identifying themselves in their 20s.
Yeah.
And how cool is that?
I know, we're getting a lot of people in their 20s, and it's really wonderful. And I think it's just a real gift to have a platform where people can tune in and tune out whenever they want to. And Renee and I are doing this as a service. We're not asking for anything in return. We just want to do what we can to contribute right now together. And we both contribute a lot through our books and our workshops, but we're very aware of the finances of people all around the world right now. And we're happy to, this is a time in our lives where we came here to help. And so we're delighted that so many people from diverse cultures, diverse spiritual paths, and diverse ages are watching our show. It's really wonderful.
Speaking of finances, that would probably be a really good thing to forgive, especially all of you healers out there who like give and give and give to the world. And, you know, it doesn't always look like that the finances come back from where you're giving it. And I don't know about you, Sandra, but over the years, and I know that we've spoken about this, how many healers become really resentful and really angry that they just keep giving and giving and giving. And I know it all depends on my spiritual condition, how much I feel, you know, good or not so good about that. But that's like a place where, you know, a real good piece of forgiveness work really could take place. Because when we show up of service and it's not met, boy, it shows you good insight into your spiritual condition and how that is met back at you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, there's so much about forgiveness, and I wanted to say a little bit more about that, but just to come back to loop around to something that you just said, Renee. You know, I spent. I know people have a hard time believing this, but I spent most of the beginning of my career one step away from being homeless. And, people didn't have money to pay for workshops. And so, I always did whatever I needed to do to get people in. And I had so many clients. I had I had waiting lists for 6 months for clients, but nobody could pay me. Everybody gave me tobacco. So I always had a card that I could move into just in case. And I never got into a thing about being angry. It just wasn't where I was at the time. I was happy to do the work that I was doing. And, I was frustrated that I was one step away from homeless. But if you hang in there long enough, the point that I'm trying to make is that life is a cycle, and there are no cycles that just have a particular part of either you're in abundance or you're not in abundance. We all experience the entire wheel. And so it was just like when I was talking in dreams, I think a lot of us just don't stay persistent and don't understand that whatever cycle we're in is going to change. And we move from summer to fall and winter and spring, and that affects every area of our lives. And so the best advice I could give to all of you is just keep contributing and doing your work, and the wheel does turn at some point, and abundance does enter into your life. And that's another show that we can do at some point.
I'll jot that down.
Yeah. There's a lot of exercises I have about abundance, so we'll do that. But but with forgiveness is such a multi-layered topic, because we have, where do we judge ourselves? And right now I'm seeing so many people having a hard time watching. Whole species are becoming extinct right now. And there's not only the grief that people are feeling about that, but there's also the feeling of blame and judgment, self-blame and judgment of, I'm another human being on the planet who's contributing to the suffering of other species. And then, there's the friends and family and ancestors, all the trauma that we've experienced, and this person hurt me, and so there's the people we need to forgive in our lives. And we can't forget about ourselves, not just about the environment, but I think that one of the hardest things for people who are devoted to a spiritual path is self-forgiveness. We tend to judge ourselves really hard, and self-forgiveness is a very important piece too. So and we also need to forgive all the human beings who we're mad at on the planet right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the best ways for me has to do that has been to understand that there is no out there. There is nothing happening that is not part of who I am. And that means that I have to own the extinction, and I have to own the anger, and I have to own the disharmony, as and find that place in me that is that taker, and is that one who's walking not in integrity. And sometimes the more refined we get, the more difficult that can be.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we did a lot about that on our show, Take the High Road. And it was a very popular show, so people can review that if you haven't done that, because Take the High Road is exactly what Renee has just shared with us, in that there is nothing outside of us. It's all a projection of our own inner state of consciousness. The other thing that gets really tricky, and I have to tell you, my students really dislike me when I share this. This is not a comfortable shamanic principle. But in shamanic work, we have a soul, and our soul is our essence. It's our life force. It's our vitality. And we can lose a part of our soul through trauma and through different events that happen to us in our lives. But one of the things that people really don't understand, people love the understanding that we have a soul, and people are happy to hear that a soul retrieval can be done to bring back those lost soul parts that we lost through different trauma and events in our lives. But in shamanism, we also talk about how the soul ends up being connected to others, how our soul ends up being connected to others, how we steal people's souls, and how we give a piece of our soul away to others. And that's training that we got growing up. It comes through psychically. Our parents don't sit us down and talk about soul stealing, but we learn it through our family systems. And I've addressed this on other shows. But where this impacts us so deeply around forgiveness is that whenever you cannot forgive another human being, you've actually stolen their soul. This is an understood shamanic belief. When you cannot forgive somebody, that means you're holding on to a piece of their soul, their vitality, and you're not only hurting them, but you're connected to the people that you want to let go of. Like you want this person as far away from you as possible, and yet they're always right on your shoulder because you have taken a piece of them by not being able to forgive them. This is old-time shamanism, and it's known throughout the world. But the tricky part to this is we can't force forgiveness. Forgiveness comes in its own timing. And so it's a very uncomfortable aspect to talk about in forgiveness, is that we are tied soul to soul with every human being that we cannot forgive. And so I know people don't like when I share this. They fight with me when I share it all the time. But the bottom line is we all need to work towards forgiveness, even if we can't forgive at the moment, just so we can be free. Because you're never going to be free to these people until you can forgive them. So it's a conundrum.
It certainly is. A lot of times I'll tell clients of mine to just pray for the willingness to be willing. Some willingness to be willing, not even that you have to go totally all there, because sometimes people have done some things that really have, interfered or disrupted your path to the degree that, that you become who you are, like in your life. I was having this walk last night because a friend of mine, she teaches this course for lesbians, how lesbians can meet other lesbians. And she sends out this email about have you been hurt? Have you been this? Have you been? And one of the things that came to me last night was like, to forgive that part of yourself that believes that part's too broken to heal. And I had not thought of it that way. It's like, well, you missed that one about I believe that I'm too broken. That part of my life is too broken to heal. And so that's what we were talking about, that self-forgiveness. And then so it is, then maybe I can forgive myself and move on from that place. And it was just such a stunning moment of wow, where did that idea come from? And where does that forgiveness piece have to come? And it came after the conversation about really forgiving somebody else for being who they are. forgiving other people to be who they are and allow them the dignity of their own path is such a gift when you can get there.
Yeah, and another part of the blessing, to add to what you just shared, Renee, is that when we can look at our brokenness, and I know this is also difficult to do, but when we can look back on our brokenness and see that it actually sculpted us to the beings that we are now, it gives us a different perspective, and it creates the opportunity, if we want to open up our hearts and say, I realize that this was suffering and that this was not right, that we're not making it right all of a sudden. This was not right how I was treated. I did not deserve to be treated in this way. But the journey that this hurt and suffering took me on brought me to the place that I am right now. And I have more compassion that I can show to myself and to others, because I know what it feels like to feel that broken. Mm-hmm. And so when you can acknowledge that, something changes too, you know, when you realize that your brokenness is actually bringing you to another place of your evolution.
And I agree with that you have to be able to witness it in order to clear it and clean it and then release it. And, you know, because so much of when I see clients or people out in the world who are really angry and unable to forgive, it's always because it's not real clear. It's always because, you know, that tunnel vision of only being able to see it from one perspective is the mode of operating. And you know, just to be able to move into that place of they used to say in the lodge, to be able to walk in somebody else's shoes.
Right.
You know, and that's such a beautiful thing to think about, like, well, where are they seeing it from their perspective? Where, you know, and move you from that place of so rigid hatred or anger or self-justification.
Yeah, I had, I think many of you who watch the show and listen know that I work with the Egyptian goddess Isis as a spiritual teacher in my shamanic journeys. And every few years, it's a rare event, but every few years, her husband, Osiris, the Egyptian god Osiris, comes in at very big moments in my life. It's like when a very big being, strong being, has to come in and talk to me. And one time I was so angry. I had a terrible, terrible split with somebody I was working with. It got so ugly. It was beyond my wildest dreams of what could happen in my life. And I wanted justice. I wanted justice because I was right. And I went on a journey and I said, I want justice. And Osiris comes in and goes, whose justice do you want? He said to me, both of you have your own sides. So where does justice come in? Where does justice come in? This isn't a one-sided issue. And, you know, Osiris is one of those authority figures. When he speaks, I listen. And I don't give my power away, but I listen. And I've thought about that over the years because, just as you were saying, Renee, everybody has their own perspective on this. And so sometimes we have to understand that those who we can't forgive are operating out of their soul's calling and their soul's destiny. And sometimes what we need to do is to just be with what's happening and learn how to forgive so that we're not staying anchored to a part of our past that we really want to be freed from.
It's kind of been interesting because over the course of doing these talks with you, like sometimes like people that we've both met along the way and stuff, and you know, you might say something or I might say something, you know, and I'll be really great when I've found how much I've grown. Like, in the way that I can always tell that I've grown is that I'm neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm neutral, there is nothing else to forgive, or there's another layer I haven't gotten to. But generally, it's like, wow, oh, look at, because I think what you were saying was so true about that forgiveness is grace. It happens at the time of its own time. There's no way to force feed forgiveness. And I always say, you know, resistance gives you the places to look. You know, that it gives you the places to look, but that's how you grow, is to be able to do that. And I was working with this man and he was driving me crazy. And I thought to myself, okay, I need to change my perception here or this isn't going to work. And if I'm going to be stranded here miserable, then I need to change my job. And, you know, because it all comes down to what part can I play in this forgiveness dance?
Yeah, and it is a dance. It is a dance. And this is a place where we have choice. It doesn't always feel like we have choice because our egos and personalities, we like to hold on. You know, it's just a part of being a human being. We like to hold on to joy. We like to hold on to anger. We like to hold on to all the states, but, you know, everything's impermanent and everything changes. And so sometimes it's just interesting to sit with yourself and reflect on, what if I don't want this person's soul tied to me all the time because I can't forgive this person? What if I really want my freedom and the only way to get my freedom is to start the process of reflecting on it's time to let this go so that a new chapter in my life can happen without dragging every trauma and everything that happened into my past into my present and my future. And it doesn't always feel like we have a choice when it's around forgiveness, because our ego doesn't give us the choice. And so we have to go to a deeper part of ourselves. We have to go to our heart. We have to go to our soul. We have to go to our spirit, which is love and light and is a reflection of the Creator. We have to move beyond our ego, because our ego is always going to say blame, judge, separation, because that's the nature of the ego, is we perceive separation. And how many of us create separation is through anger.
It's certainly an expedient path to separation, for sure. Which kind of gets us to our exercise today. And one of I've adapted the Ho'oponopono exercise to a wind exercise, which I think is absolutely astonishing when the wind shows me these great new exercises to do. And I think we're ready for that. Are you?
Yeah, let me just get my rattles.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
great. Thank you, Renee, for doing this. I'm excited.
This is kind of fun. So in the Hawaiian tradition, there's this belief that we're responsible for everything. Again, that there is no out there, and that everything comes to your attention for a reason. And for this exercise, what would be good is to pick something that you know that you kind of self-cause. So you don't have to, like, let's not go and forgive, you know, your biggest enemy right now. But why don't you do something like, okay, last week I didn't pay my bill and it was late, or something that you have to forgive yourself for, or something littler. Okay, unless that bill that you didn't pay got you tossed out of your house, then that's more work to do. But so what we're going to do is I'm going to call to each wind direction, and with a promise of some forgiveness here. Once you pick an issue, and Sandra's going to rattle, and I'm going to have you get the issue, and then I'll go around the compass with the issue, and I'm going to blow the wind for each part to see if you get some information about if there's a little piece of work that needs to be done first, or if you could just send it off in a breeze. How does that sound? Start by getting yourself really, really comfortable, and think about one small issue, something that you're having trouble letting go, something you're having a hard time forgiving, and something that you think somebody else or something else has done to you. And first, we're going to call to Eurus, the wind of the east, and this is the wind of the mind and the beliefs and your memories, past, present, and future. So this might be something that you've been remembering over and over again. And with this wind breath, take your responsibility. Take your responsibility for your issue in your life. And we're going to say that we're sorry. And Eurus, the east wind, is going to help us know what we are sorry about. And as we move south, we're going to ask for forgiveness. Please forgive me, Notice. Notice is the south wind, and it's about our emotional needs and desires. So please forgive me for not meeting my needs, for not meeting my desires. And as we move to the west, we're going to call upon Zephyrus to thank this issue for showing up in our lives right now. Ask Zephyrus to show you how this issue is being a gift in your life. And now we're going to call to the north wind of Boreas and ask for the love for this, the love for ourselves, and the love for whatever it is that we're trying to forgive today. And so we're going to bring in that love. It might be the love of the wind. It might be the love of nature. It might be the love of these calls. And as we come back to the room, scan your body and just double check that you're a little bit lighter, that you're sorry, that you can forgive yourself, that you're thankful, and that you love something bigger and more divine than yourself.
That was lovely, Renee. Thank you for sharing that with us. And you know, we always, I think that everything has to be more complicated than we make it. And what I find is that it's these simple exercises and working with such a strong ally as the wind can if we don't do the whole thing in an exercise, if it's just a start, it opens up a portal and it says to the universe that I need healing. Whoops.
That was Sami.
Yeah. Sami was either agreeing or not agreeing.
I don't know. I think we just got a universal nod.
Yeah, that I need healing in this particular area. And I find that when you open up that door, things start to happen. And so if you're willing to at least open the door to forgiveness, to start working on that process and embracing the path of forgiveness, miracles start to happen in your life and things start to come in that help you, like the wind. So thank you, Renee.
You're very welcome. Sometimes I see the wind as, that force that shakes the issue loose just enough so that there's a little bit of spaciousness on both sides of it in order to possibly allow grace to come in and to shift it. So please come over to the Shamans Cave over on Facebook and share your experiences with us, because it helps other people who are having a similar experience who might not be ready to speak up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And always remember to check out Shamans TV. We've done a lot of shows now. We've really been moving on it since January. And so we always let you know what shows are coming up. And there's such a wealth of shows in our archive that you can go back to that can help you work with some of the material that we're bringing up in future shows. Sometimes we have to go back and repeat some of the healing work that we did in an old show that will help you build, building steps, building a new fabric of reality, because in every spiritual tradition, and I think I say this in every show, in every spiritual tradition, it's known you have to build an invisible form of substance before any change happens in the ordinary realms. And so the beautiful exercise that you just led, Renee, starts to help us to build that invisible form of substance so that forgiveness does happen. So it's a beautiful way to work.
Awesome. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you again next week.